Yeah, we're starting anytime soon. We're just waiting for a number of us to join. Facilitator is on the call. He has been on the call for since 11. So let's go and get our people up. I know some of us are still either reeling from the rainfall of yesterday. I think it rained in many parts of Nigeria yesterday, and my head it also rained in some places in Kenya. So I know it, and up to this morning it rained in some areas, right, in some locations. So that might be it. Let's grab our morning coffee. It's afternoon in some places, so let's still do whatever favorite beverage we are into, and let's sit back and enjoy today's live session. So today's live session is going to be the concluding parts for doing economics, measuring climate change. Basically, another way of saying that is, we are reviewing or understanding the economic impacts or implication of climate change. Some of the highlights of the last class includes so just brief moments, some of the things that we had learned in the last class. So from the facilitator, for those that are just joining in, the facilitators, our facilitator is from it's not from the west side of Africa now, it's from the south side of Africa, from the beautiful country of Zambia. Abufuna Muyunda is on the call. Soon bring him in. So some of the things that we had learned on Monday was, from the facilitator, is that we are always thinking in terms. So when we hear of climate change disasters and the effects of climate change on food, security, agriculture, we're always thinking in terms of problems. Our facilitator emphasized a lot on so maybe Africa should start seeing this problem from an economic standpoint, from a business standpoint. We would attract the kind of fund or the kind of support that we indeed need if we can present how it would be beneficial to the investor or to the international community. So it's not just going cap in hand. We need to bring value to the table, essentially. We also talked about one of the nuggets that we're able to was that we shift the perspective on climate change from a social issue to an economic one, viewing climate change effects as opportunities rather than just crisis can attract investors and unlock climate finance. Another point that was gotten there was that while international sources of climate funds exist, few African countries have established dedicated climate adaptation funds at the national level. Why don't we consider the importance of creating such funds for local resilience efforts, which is also very important, right? Many of our countries go to many of these developed nations, just basically going around to see how to mobilize, fund, and there's nothing wrong with that. So part of what our facilitator is saying is that to our countries in Africa, to the independence of Africa means something to us. So why don't we begin to dedicate, specific funds for dealing with this disaster, dealing with some of these issues that are affecting Africa, and where no one would really be controlling it from anywhere, and it's going to be Africans, controlling their destinies, essentially. Another aspect is that, so some of us, on Monday were able to jot down some things. So this is from Damasin Omulo in Kenya. So Damasin said that so part of what he learned is that we should view the challenges posed by climate change as opportunities to be exploited for economic well-being of mankind rather than problems to lament upon. So I'm kind of re-emphasizing what was just said. Another points or insights was shared by Respa Mungina in Kenya also. She's saying that we need to work with the available resources to innovatively create locally led solutions for climate action, contributing to say. So essentially, our climate action needs to have a local um, context appeal. So what that means is that, just like we've always said, act local, but think global. Let the innovation be big, right? But how would it translate to the life of the average man or average woman or average child in the rural, underserved regions of Africa? And so I think we are set, and it's about time for us to start today's lecture. I'll soon be bringing the facilitator in. So while we wait for the rest of us to join in, let's just do this. So I just like to, of course, as our tradition, let's use the chat box for every other message, and the Q&A feature on our window for specific questions. Want us to bring on our specific questions to the class. Like I said, as our usual tradition, how do you feel today? In one word, can you describe how the day has been? For some of us, it's already half day. It's past noon. So how is today? Can everyone hear me? If you can hear me, please let's use our okay. If you can hear me, can you use the emoji button right there on your screen? Okay, thank you very much. So let me quickly look at the charts to see what we are saying. Candy is saying that, oh, okay, so the day has been busy. I think that's a good one. Hopefully it's not just going to be about activities, but a lot of results coming in that process. So let me do this. Let me share my screen. Yeah, so can everyone see my screen? Can everyone see my screen? Yes. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. In our presence is a very wonderful person, a great coach. I must say, because I was a part of Monday's class, and it was really, really exciting. It was really interactive. We enjoyed Mr. Kuna's lecture style, and it's really an opportunity for us to do this, right? Please let us keep clapping our hands as I introduce our facilitator for today. He's on the call, right? He's on the call, and I really, really am excited to see how today goes on with. So Mr. Kufuna is the co-founder of Young Volunteers for Environment. We had read a long profile of him. In fact, someone said that he has a condensed profile. I think that's what you call it when there's a lot of things that he our facilitator has been into. And we are hoping that of course, just like we always said, your participation in this fellowship gives you like a foot in. You are free to in this period, and after this after the period of this program, to reach out to the facilitator on LinkedIn, on the social media, to approach them to give you some kind of mentorship. They would not write your proposals for you, but you can ask specific questions that you want specific answers to, and I'm sure that they will be willing to help out. So good morning, Mr. Kufuna. You're welcome to Zero Carbon Africa Impact Program. Good morning. So while I am still creating for this, does anyone have a specific question? So while we connect our facilitator. Yes, and also I'd like to welcome my colleagues, Chinonso and Bamidele, again, always supportive on the call and this program. Yesterday we enjoyed, we had, so I don't know what to call it now. Is it a proposal writing training? Because that was what it turned out to be. We did that, a proposal writing, training to help guide some of us, right, as we write our proposals. So let me see what is in the chat box. Please, if you'd like to speak to what has been taught since on Monday or since Monday, you can raise your hand if you have specific questions while we connect our facilitator. You can also raise your hand. We have 1 minute to just say something. So while we get that on, I like to still read what someone said that the day has really been an engaging one. It is really nice to hear. That was from Musudik Abdul Hamid. Obioma Ogu says the day has been exciting. Serge. Okay, all right. So I think this is a good time to start. Good morning, Mr. Kukula. Yes. Good morning. Yes, I can hear you. Maybe we can try that again. Yeah, good morning. Oh, okay. I think it's breaking up. It's breaking up.
All right.
Yeah, okay. I think this is better.
There's something wrong with my audio.
Yeah, but I can hear you clearly now. Yeah, I hear you clearly now. So I think we can continue, and then I'll circle back to know if it's working fine.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, Dr. Kuna. Yeah, the floor is yours. We have hopefully new set of students. So just like we did on Monday, the floor is yours. And let us engage the students. So more people are expected to join.
Just give me 3 minutes. I just want to fix my sound a bit.
Okay. I mean, that is perfect. That's perfect. Yeah. All right. So while we wait for our facilitator to work the audio out from his end, does anyone have questions, specific questions, comments from the program in general, your experiences? Please indicate by a raise of hands. Okay. Okay, while I wait for that, some of the lessons that we got from Monday's class from Ruby Cretaceous from Zambia, she's saying that what she learned is that the lessons was very clear on what we must do. We must have a mindset change to see disaster as an opportunity to provide solutions that can positively impact change towards economic recovery. We as African countries must put our heads together and make sure that we raise our own climate fund. Perfect. This is really good from Ruby. From Nigeria, we have Amugo Praise. Praise says that the lecture stressed on the need to design projects in such a way that it solves an economic issue, right? We were also encouraged not to work in silos, but to embrace collaboration and partnerships. This is very important. Yeah, hello, sir.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. If you could just increase the volume of that. Yeah, but I can hear you from my end. If we can hear our facilitator, please let's indicate by the usual emojis that we share. If you can hear Mr. please just okay. So I think that they can hear. Good morning again.
Start now, I think.
Yes.
Sorry,
yes, loud and clear.
Sorry for the back and forth. Technology is failing us.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I think I've been introduced earlier on. Akufuna Mionda is my name, and I come from a part of Africa called Zambia. I stay in Lusaka. I come from the western part of Zambia. That's where I was born and bred. And I am a climate leader. I'm part of the Africa Climate Reality Project, the one which is chaired by the former US Vice President Al Gore, among many other climate leaders we have in Africa. I was the coordinator for the Southern and Central Africa regions sometime between 2020 and 2022, and we work together to grow the base or the number of climate leaders in Africa as a whole. And I think one of the leaders that we had in Zambia was Mr. Sejin Poi. I'm happy to see him in the room today. And I think a number of others from other African countries. I'm also party to the JVE International, which is YVE in English. From French is JVE. So we have a chapter in Zambia called the Young Volunteers for Environment in Zambia, which I co-founded with other young people. And if anyone of you is from JVE, any part of Africa, then I think we are speaking the same language. Today, I was invited here to speak on climate change and economics, which is a very unique but very special and important topic at the right time in terms of our efforts that we are putting in place to address this crisis. And like we did last week, I don't know if it's last week or it was this week, I've forgotten already. But I think, yeah, earlier this week we had
It
a
was on
similar.
Monday, sir.
Oh, it was Monday. Oh, okay. Yeah, time.
Yes.
Yeah, seems to be very much on the fast trajectory. So, but as we had met with other colleagues from, I think, 6 African countries. I don't know how many countries we have in this one. We had Rwanda, South
Yes.
Africa, Ghana,
Um,
Nigeria, Kenya.
yes, we have Nigerians, Rwandans, Ghanaians. Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone is represented here, the South Africans.
yeah. So I think that's a very good representation. And I have a PowerPoint presentation with me, but like I did last time, it will just serve as a guide, not really like our main focus of our discussion. So I want this to be more interactive and engaging and based on your experiences as participants. Then we can build up a case from there and learn from each other, because I know in this room we have, I think, a lot of experience and a lot of exposure and a lot of knowledge in the room that we want to tap into. And that's basically what we're going to do. So please be present and participate and contribute as and when the time comes. So I'll share my screen, and I think if you can see my screen, you can let me know so that we can start. So this is what we have.
Yes, so we can see your screen, sir.
Okay. Yes, so our topic is doing economics and measuring climate change. So the idea is we'll be able to expose to the tools and knowledge that is needed to measure and analyze economic impacts of climate change. And the basic takeaways will be to understand the basic concept of climate change in economics, and how we can measure these and identify key policy tools and strategies, and then develop skills in data analysis and economic modeling, and apply this concept in real-world case studies. Then this is just basically the outline of what we're going to cover. But before that, I would like us to have at least 3 people in the room. If we can have one from East, one from South, and one from the west part of Africa, and if we have North, we can have 4 to just share in the room their personal experiences in as far as climate change is concerned. What is your personal story in about a minute or so? So that we also manage time properly. So I'd like to hear from the people in the room. You can unmute yourself, introduce yourself, which country you're from, and which region you're representing for Africa. Then you can tell us your personal experience in terms of the climate change situation in your country or in your local community, or as an individual. Do you have any volunteers?
Okay. Yes, the volunteer waiting for now, Nancy Olo, is going to build a cat first. So Nancy, you can unmute your mic and speak there.
Thank you very much. My name is Nancy Olo from Kenya. Within Kenya, I come from a region that is called Nyanza, that is basically within the lakeshore. And I want to say that climate change has really had a lot of effect on so many things. For example, we have issues to do with the food security, we have health, we have the economy generally of Kenya has also been affected by climate issues, in the sense that due to the carbon emissions getting into the environment, we have a lot of greenhouse gases that are being emitted. That basically brings us to what we call global warming. And when we have global warming, there are normally temperature variations and also climate variations, which also makes our crops not to grow very well and very conducively in certain environments. This has brought a lot about floods or drought in whichever way, depending on how the global warming effect has been at that particular time. At the same time, due to lots of waste being generated into the environment and also those greenhouse gases, we also have issues to do with health, like, for example, respiratory diseases and some of these skin diseases like cancers that we have on the skin and all that, due to the high ultraviolet rays that we have in the environment due to issues of climate change. And I would say that my experience on climate change, we basically just need to, as a country and maybe as a fellowship and as individuals, we need to come up with the policies and strategies that can be able to help us to basically become climate change adaptable and also resilient. Because despite the fact that there's too much heat, what are we supposed to do? What can we do to ourselves so that this heat does not affect us? Or what can we do due to those high temperatures to make sure that our crops are still growing and are not affected by the high temperatures? I don't know whether I've covered all the things you asked me. I've said so many things. And economically, generally, when we don't have food, it means we have poverty as well. If we are sick, we have poverty as well. And we are also reducing the economic strength. There's a lot of reduction in economic development and also in basically the economic growth of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Asante sana. You have spoken so well as a representative of the people, but I would like to hear from you as Nancy, like what is your personal story, experience? Like, for example, where you are putting the word we, replace that with I, and then you can tell us that story. But otherwise, you have spoken well as a leader, speaking for the voices of the people that are facing this crisis in different parts of Kenya as a country, as the economics. That is well much explained. But I want to see yourself in the story. Where is the I in the story? Please go ahead.
Hello.
Okay.
So this is another person, Musudik
Yes.
Abdul Hamid. Yes.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am Musodik Abdul Hamid from Nigeria, a student of sociology, and I lead some of my colleagues on campus with the name of the organization Campus Recycling Champions, whereby we focus on SDG 6 and 13 to talk about proper waste disposal, sanitization, clean water. So from my own experience about the fellowship, that's very been an awesome one for us to understand the need for youth, the need for us coming up, living from our normal academics with the power of the classroom to understand the climate space. Climate action is not something we can always run from, it's something that is happening that we are seeing. But we need to be environmental conscious. As I tell my friends, you don't need to have a trophy to be a climate champion. You need to be environmental conscious. So in my own understanding and experience in my environment here, I live in Lagos, and Lagos has been a central hub where business and all come around, the market and all. What I tend to understand is waste disposal, proper waste disposal in Lagos is a big issue. By those in the marketplace, those companies and all, the way they dispose of waste is really affecting the growth of Lagos. Lagos is close to water, and when rain comes around and every other thing, there's flooding in some certain areas, and those who are the receiving end are those living close to these riverine areas, whereby their means of livelihood is fishing and house farming. So the waste disposal into the sea, into the drainage is really affecting them, and we're looking forward that we're proposing to look forward to see how people can understand the waste proposal, proper waste disposal into the different ways, the plastic, the tin, the paper, and the general waste, and use them in other way around to make our economy grow. So that is my own experience when it comes to the climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very good contribution, and that's much appreciated. And I hope at the end of this lecture or session, yes, environmental conscious, but we want to hear more business conscious, and business conscious, whereas the definition of business includes environmental sustainability in it.
And yeah, thanks. We can go to the next one. So that was East and West.
Okay. So there is Sally Hassan. You can unmute your mic, Mr. Sally. Thank you. Good morning. Yes, clearly.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Saleh Hassan. I am from Nigeria, Borno State, northeastern part of the country. Sincerely speaking, when it comes to climate change, northeastern part of Nigeria comprises of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, Gombe, and Taraba State is grossly affected by this problem of climate change, especially from the area that I came, which is Borno State. This issue affects the farming activities and then the livelihood activities in the area. For instance, in this season farming activities, we experience very low or shortage of rainfall. It's only at the end of this last month, August, and then coming to the this September that we experience some huge amount of rainfall, which has affected some of the even crop that have been planted in the farmlands. It has already been dried, leaving the farmers with a great loss. And then all this issue emanated from the effect of climate change. So in our position as a youth, with some of the organization, for instance, we have NYPI, Nigerian Youth for Peace Initiative, in which also we have a program of agricultural outreach to some of our farmers, whereby we used to go to interface with the farmers in this area on issues that has to do or that cause climate change, because our people deeply rely on cutting wood in order for them to serve as a firewood. So this problem of cutting our trees in our area, it has a great impact or negatively to our ecosystem, thereby causing the greenhouse emission in the area to become worse. So even in our proposal that we come off in respect to this program, Zero Carbon Africa, we come off with a project on sensitization on tree planting as a measure taken to mitigate the problem of climate change in the area. So if we can also have a partnership that can lead to also bring an end to this issue of climate change, it will serve as a welcome idea for us. Thank you very much. This is my takeoff.
Thank you so much. The last one.
So the last person is Mr. Serge. Please unmute your mic and carry on.
Yeah, greetings everyone.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for the privilege. I am Serge Mpoi, actually from Zambia, a climate reality leader and African Climate Reality Project. I had a chance to be trained by the same facilitator today. He was my mentor. He mentored me, and since then we have been working hand on hand with him, and I'm grateful, sir. So my experience as a climate leader is that since 2020, when I was trained, I embarked into a training as well, training the people in a community called Maiba, which is a refugee camp. because what I saw was like people in this camp were cutting trees to get charcoal to use for their cooking issues. But after my training, I started teaching them also on the consequences of cutting the trees, and we came up with some policies with the authorities of the camp, and as well, actually, we are training people on how to make a charcoal, clean charcoal, and we are doing well. A lot of people have started migrating from the let's say the usual charcoal that is made from the cutting of trees to the charcoal which is made from the waste. So that is my own experience. And apart that one, I had also a chance after my training by the same facilitator on the pay-go system of the solar system. I had a chance also to be distributing the solar system in the same camp. So we had a chance to save a lot of household. They are using today clean energy, and we are proceeding. We are still pushing for them to start also using the clean cooking solutions as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're welcome. That's good experience, and I think we can now build up from that. So I asked that question deliberately because I wanted to listen to your experiences and how you tell your stories in terms of your relationship with the changing climate itself, which is very important, and that's where everything else starts from. So, but before we go into the details, it's very much important for us to really decipher the differences between climate mitigation, climate adaptation. And most importantly, in the mitigation space, we are talking about how we contribute to the global greenhouse gas emissions, which consequently leads to the occurrence or the creation or the happening of the changing climate itself due to the rising temperatures. And also adaptation is when the problem has happened, how do we survive the consequences? Do we change the way we do certain things? Do we adjust how we allocate certain resources to certain sectors? And a comparison can be brought from that perspective. But I think that is very much important to understand. So climate change has been happening. It has been changing, especially way after the industrial revolution age. And that is when man decided to say, now we want to innovate the way we produce goods and services. And now from using or from over-reliance of labor or human labor, we want to introduce use of machinery, which is where now we saw the rise in the demand for fossil fuels to power those machines to produce more goods and services. Also on the other side is because the population of the world has increased, and it is still increasing, and also that places pressure on the demand for more resources from the environment itself to produce goods and services to support our education, our agriculture, our mining, our infrastructure, industry, and all those things. So we need to produce more, and the rate at which we need to produce cannot be dependent on the human labor itself, which is why now it is very critical. There's a critical need to use machines which can produce faster and they don't get tired like human beings, which means it becomes more resource efficiency and we increase the productivity of our industries, which consequently leads to increased socio-economic development that we talk about. So that much we understand, and we know usually the system itself, the ecosystem has the way in which it can, recover from the shock naturally without any intervention from man. But what has led to the crisis where we have reached now is a situation where our rate of consumption and distributions of goods and services has emitted more fossil, greenhouse gases that has accelerated the rate at which the global average temperatures is increasing. And it has increased to a level where now we suffer the consequences that affect all other developing sectors. So the natural system can no longer sustain that. So there's pressure from anthropogenic, which is human activities in the layman's language, that have linked to that crisis which is happening now. So we see rising temperatures, which possibly that leads to the rising sea levels, and then we see floods in some areas, we see drought in some areas, we see the heat waves, we see the cyclones, hurricanes. We also see experiences where we have new diseases in some areas because the habitat has been altered, and it creates a niche for a new invasive species or a disease-carrying organism, and that worsens our health, the spectrum as a people. We also see now the pressure that we experience from overconsumption of natural resources such as water. In some areas, we have very little water. Access to clean water is a problem. Access to water to produce, say, for example, hydroelectricity is a problem itself. And now people have to now turn to other sources or alternatives which are not good, which is, for example, coal, the use of coal, or use of fuel-powered machines to produce electricity, which is also a crisis because it is worsening the situation of solving the problem. So there are a lot of things that are happening. But when I ask a question, or when we ask a question to Africa, when we say Africa, what do you want? That question is a very difficult question to answer because from person to person, experience to experience, region to region, will have a different perspective to that. And this is what the Africa Climate Summit was trying to address, to come up with what they termed as the vision for Africa in terms of climate leadership, in terms of climate, how we address climate change itself. What is our vision as Africa? What do we want as Africa? And these are very critical questions to ask because from the science, we know that we are ones experiencing the West impacts of the climate crisis itself. And on the other hand, which can be from the political perspective is the issue as the continent is almost negligible compared to one country like the US or China, which can emit as far as 35% just from the territory. So we have so much politics there happening because now some people in Africa say, oh, why wasting time? Why should we talk about mitigation? Mitigation is not the right subject for Africa. Yes, us we should talk about adaptation, because what is that to mitigate when we already emit the 4%? So the climate responsibility and climate change accountability. So there is the issue of who is accountable, which is the question that we also focus on. And this is where now we have arguments like the Annex 1 countries, the developed countries, which is the polluters, should be held accountable. And that is our agenda also as a globe, as Africa, as the global south. We should continue to press those demands to say, be held accountable, pay for the pollution that you are causing, pay for the mess that you are causing. But when you talk about the secondary term, which is what I'm referring to as climate responsibility, on this one, we have a shared responsibility as a whole. Yes, here we don't have to say, no, it is the Annex 1 countries own, it's the G20 or whatever it is. It is all of us. We have a responsibility. Why? For China, for example, to emit more, it means there's a demand for goods and services from China by Africa, for example. And Africa is one of the #1 buyers of goods and services from China. So which means the demand that is present in Africa for the goods and services that are being produced by China also is what is contributing to the increased amount of consumption levels, demand for more products, for goods and services. And because of that, China sees the market and wants to produce more, and therefore they emit more because they have to supply Africa. So we have a shared responsibility there in terms of responsibility, but in terms of accountability, yes. No. Hello.
Yes,
Yes, sir, we
hello,
can
sir.
hear you.
Yeah, it's like I was kicked out of the
Can you hear me,
meeting.
sir?
So I don't know where did I drop? I think I dropped off the call.
Oh no, you were on track, sir. Please, you can go on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was speaking about climate accountability and climate responsibility, which is where I wanted to demonstrate the difference between the two. So whereas the polluters are accountable, we have still a shared responsibility, which is why all of us should do something about addressing this mess. So let's not find our comfort in saying because Africa is the most vulnerable continent, therefore let's fold our hands and do nothing, let everyone else do the rest. So we don't have to fold our hands. So that's what we are talking about here. So now we're talking about economics. Economics simply means we want development as the continent. We want development, and for us to develop, we know Africa depends heavily on agriculture, mainly heavy rain-fed agriculture. And we also know that there are a lot of minerals, mineral resources in Africa, even natural resources in Africa, and those serve as raw materials for the desired development as a whole. But the question is, what means of production are we going to rely on? And that's where the challenge comes in, which is where now we are saying, let's go green. Green means we use renewable energy, for example, to power our industries, to produce goods and services, power our businesses, and many other examples we can give, smart agriculture and so on and so forth. But the challenge we have is we still have limited access to all these resources, from climate finance itself, from technology itself, from the technocrats perspective. We have very few experts. So there's a problem here. So for us to talk about economics, let's forget about climate change in a moment. Economics simply means goods and services being produced mainly to realize an income for the country. We want to see figures like the GDP rising for the country, which means we are making money as a country to sustain ourselves, and the economy can run by itself without any need to overborrow or any need to depend on another country to feed your own. So we need to see economic growth, and economic growth cannot happen, unfortunately, without the environment itself. So without thinking about climate change in the mind, just think about the environment and the economic demands for development. So it simply means that when you talk about economics, you cannot define economics without defining the environment and what resources we have in the environment. So to extract those resources from the environment, there's a process there, and there's need to use energy there, and there needs to distribute those resources. There's need to for the consumption value chain there. And when you begin to talk about that, that's when we begin to see the direct relationship between climate change and the economics itself. So, for example, when you talk about climate change, you're talking about its direct impact on water, land, air, and people themselves. And then there are follow-on consequences after that. So those are very critical factors, even when we're talking about economics, land, air, water, people. Yeah, those are very critical as well. Actually, I also forgot to say atmosphere represented by air, of course. So, but those are very critical. So when I'm talking about economics, land, air, water, people, very critical. When you talk about climate change, land, air, people, water, very critical. So you see why we have a direct relationship between the two. So that means it's difficult to discuss economics without discussing environment. And you cannot discuss environment without discussing the changing climate. So the changing climate simply means that in as much as we have environment, it is not static, it is not stationary. It evolves, it changes, it transforms from time to time. Therefore, it becomes unpredictable. Therefore, it becomes, a risk to highly depend on a particular resource from the environment without thinking about what change might happen to it over time. So this is where now we need experts to come in, scientists to come in to define what those problems are. And we have defined that the climate crisis is a problem from the scientific evidence itself, and it must be addressed now. So now we have two things actually on the table now. We have to protect this environment then, if we are to protect the economy itself. Because if there's overconsumption of natural resources, that is negligible of the environment itself, which means the crisis that will come will affect the same environment, and that will also lead on to affect the economy that we're talking about, and we'll lose both. So we don't want to lose both. We want to be able to carry on the economics and the environment without causing any problem to the economy or to the environment itself. So environmental sustainability, economic development. So we are for all those two at the same time. So but now, how do we approach that? That's a question. So the biggest issue that we need to understand is there's no way, if we are talking about the Africa we want, Agenda 2063, there's no way we can reach our targets outlined in the Agenda 2063 for Africa without going back to the environment in order to ensure economic growth itself. That's what the catch is. But I don't want to give you an answer to that one. I would like to ask a question to one or two people in the room to tell me which one or which economic model would you go for? The one that favors economic development at all costs, or the one that favors economic development balanced with environmental sustainability? And tell me just one or two justifications that you may have to point towards that. So you want to see economic development, you want more roads, more schools, people getting more money, GDP growing, and business thriving at the expense of the environment or at all costs? Or are you for the idea that we balance between the two? Yes, let's develop, but with some certain level of sensitivity to how we manage resources in the environment itself and protect the environment itself. And one or two people who unmute themselves and share their thoughts on that. Yes, Doctor.
Hello, Doko. Hello, Dr. Doko. Yeah, okay. Yeah, please unmute your mic and carry on. Oh, okay. So I think there's an issue with the audio there. Let's go with Amede. So you can just unmute your mic, Mr. Amede, and speak.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Akufowa. I'm sorry, I'm sure I did not pronounce the name correctly.
It's
Thank you for
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so I wanted to say that a more appropriate model will probably be something that is low cost and more inclusive, because that will now be able to help us to get to the sustainability level of it. But if we're trying to define or create an expensive model in order to address climate change, then it makes it more expensive and not as effective and sustainable. That's what I wanted to add. Something that will include most of the affected areas and be able to address the problems.
Yeah, just before you leave the call, I have a question, additional follow-up question to you. So in Zambia, we have this company that got a license to do a mine in the national park. We call it National Park.
Okay.
So From the perspective of the local community, they were for the idea that the mine do go ahead, and the chief in that community was supporting that idea because he anticipated job creation, business opportunities for his local people there.
Absolutely.
Whereas from the environmental conservationists like you and me, we are saying no, the mine shouldn't go ahead. From the economics perspective, if the mine was to go ahead, definitely we'll see an increase in the in terms of tax collection by the government, affecting the GDP for the country and so on and so forth. If you are the final person to make a decision on that issue, what would be your decision?
My decision would be that the mine can go ahead on the condition that we are able to provide a solution for the carbon emissions that's going to happen and the impact of the mine going on the people. Without, if you're going to look at only the benefits, then you're cheating yourself and the community. But we have to look at everything from the different areas in terms of the benefits, the effects, the implication, the effect on the environment and stuff like that. So we're not only going to look at the impact on the community in terms of the positive areas. What are we going to do to reduce the negative impact? That should be my main question. And I will have to look for a solution to that first before we now give a final conclusion that the mine will go on or not. The mine will not go on if it's going to kill more people and give us money. So that's my view. If there are scientists or business people or miners that can provide us a solution to how we are going to reduce the negative impact on the environment and the people, then the mine can go on.
That's fantastic. Anyone else to add their thought on that? Very interesting.
So I don't know if Dr. Doko is able to resolve the audio issue.
Is it on?
Hello, Dr. Doko. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear, please.
Yes, we can.
Yes, please. So I wanted to say earlier, like I was trying to say, that sustainable development is the ultimate goal. What is the importance of development if it doesn't benefit those who are even after us? So therefore, as a follow-up to the question, the second question you asked the lady, of course, you will not want to mine if the ultimate goal is just to get what is down there and destroy the ecosystem or the environment for even the animals and the water bodies and whatever we as humans depend on. So ultimately, I believe that I'll go for the second choice where we have to seek development sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we move on. And so in terms of climate change and the economic impacts that are associated with it, so we know that like we mentioned earlier on, we had talked about agriculture, water resources, we talked about energy itself, and I think we didn't talk about tourism itself. So the issue here is when there's a crisis like climate change happening, and it touches on all these sectors. From the agriculture sector, we know about 55% of Africans are employed through the agriculture sector, and the water resources are critical, not only for the people, which is an aspect that I want to bring in here, but also for the entire biodiversity, because our food comes from the environment. So the welfare of the the food we find in the environment also is very important. If we cannot plant and we cannot grow food naturally, and then that means we cannot feed itself. And also the welfare of wildlife itself also is very much important, because if our wildlife is gotten rid of, extinct, it means we cannot survive also as a people. We depend on one another within the ecosystem, within the biodiversity. So which is why when you're thinking about the impacts, let's not just restrict ourselves to the impact on me as a human being, but what is the impact in terms of other sectors like tourism, other sectors like wildlife conservation, and even forestry itself. We need forestry more than anything else. The air we breathe, we say the trees are the lungs for the earth. So if the crisis gets rid of our ability to sustain our forest, that means we are also in a bigger problem. So we depend on the resources we find in the environment, and the quality of the water itself is critical for us in terms of health. And that's why the health sector cannot be left out. Agriculture, our irrigation, mainly is rain-fed agriculture. And if there's any crisis that happens in that space, we are also affected. We cannot have food. Next thing we see is a rise in the food price itself because the cost of production has gone up. And when there's a rise in food pricing, we know what usually happens. There's also, political instability in the country, because now people are asking questions. Like in Zambia here, we know that the amount of a bag of millimil, 25 kg of bag of millimil, has gone up from where it was 130 kwacha about last year to about 300 kwacha, almost double the amount it was last year. And everyone is talking about that, and it's a problem in terms of the political situation in the country, because now people are saying the government is failing, and that's why the food prices have gone up. So what happens now is, from as simple as lack of rainfall, which has led to crop failure, it has gone further now to bring about issues around political instability. And actually, in some instances, people start rioting. And when people start rioting, it becomes a security issue, and already it has escalated. And now what happens now is, from as simple as climate change impact on agriculture, it is our climate change impact on the security situation of a particular country. And that's how these impacts escalate. And there's a cost involved in all those issues. There's a cost involved, because if the production of crops is going up, that means the farmer is suffering. And the farmer is suffering, it means our stomachs also be suffering. And if our stomachs are suffering, it means our health also be suffering. We start seeing more increased numbers of malnourished children. That means we are suffering. And if that is happening, we see problems in terms of street riots. For example, people, if they are rioting now, we have to spend more money on tear gas. In terms of security wing, the police have to spend more money on tear gas. They have to spend more time on the streets trying to control the situation. And that also is a budget that is being eaten up, because the government has to sustain those police officers on duty. They have to pay them allowances. And that's a cost that keeps on adding and 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 adding. We don't see those costs in terms of, when you talk about climate change, you only see as far as agriculture and crops, and it ends there. But if you look at it in detail, it takes you as far back as that, a situation that I've given as an example there. Same with the water resources itself. One of the areas in Western Province called Shangombo, where my mother comes from, they actually have been impacted negatively, because we had very sporadic, rainfall last year, and they couldn't get proper yields in terms of their whatever they planted. So the little crops that they was hoping to harvest were eaten up by elephants. So elephants came from wherever they are, looking for greener pastures. They are looking for water source. They are looking for food to eat, because there's no food where they are, habiting. And now they have to move. That is migration of wildlife itself to another greener place or greener pasture in some other place, which ended up to be the village where my mother comes from. And these elephants, they ate up all the little crops that were remaining. And that means a simple problem that we thought was just affecting man, it's also affecting wildlife. And when wildlife is affected, wildlife will come now, and now we have what we call human-animal conflicts that we have to sort out, which is also a cost on its own. Do we kill the wildlife? No, we don't kill the wildlife. But how do we control? We need to spend more resources. And those resources will also come from the national budget, which means the money which should have gone to support, the girl child education somewhere will now be taken to go and fight the human-animal conflict elsewhere. Why? Because of the changes in the climate that have affected the habitats for the wildlife. Wildlife has to go to compete for the same resources with the human life, which is now bringing the challenge that we are facing now. So this is just a broader picture that we're talking about. We can give many examples from energy perspective, we can give many examples from tourism perspective, because now, if we lose out in terms of wildlife, it means we lose out in terms of tourism revenue. We have one of the most famous traditional ceremony here in Zambia called the Komboka ceremony, and that ceremony thrives when there are floods. And we have had, I think, about 4 times where we have never had that ceremony because there was completely no water. Because the Narikwanda boat that is used to transport the king from the lower floodplains to the higher lands cannot move when there's no water. So all those revenue that we should have collected from the tourists that will come from all across the world is lost out because no one is going to come to attend the ceremony that happened. And this simply because there's no water. So from as simple as no water to loss of revenue through tourism itself. And what happens over time in terms of our cultural heritage, it is slowly fading out as well, because now people lose interest. Or if your ceremony didn't happen 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, next time when there were 10,000 people attending, there will be 5,000 people attending. Next time there will be 2,000 people attending. And we are slowly also losing our heritage in the process. So it's a huge cost. Climate change has got a huge cost on us, beyond what we actually call the economics that are affected by the climate change itself. It has a ripple effect on many other sectors and many other spheres that inform human development and society development. And also, this is one thing that I would like to challenge all of us in this room to say, we need to be leaders. To be a leader doesn't mean you have to have a position. You don't need a position to be a leader. You can be a leader everywhere you are, whatever you are doing at any level of governance or system you are. You can also be a leader that can inform changing the narrative on how we do certain things. One critical aspect is data, which I've spoken with other class last time. We talk about Africa is one of the most, it's actually the most vulnerable continents in the face of the climate crisis. But show me the data. Oh my God, stories start coming now. No, because last time there was flood. Okay, flood, how did it impact our agriculture? How did it impact our health? How did it impact our education? How did it impact? No one has got information. We do not have information. We don't have any information. And if there is no information, then it means we can't make informed decisions. And if you can't make informed decisions, it means you're not prepared. Which means anytime should the crisis happen, we are the one to lose out the most. No, we shouldn't allow this situation from occurring. We need to change this narrative, and we should participate in research and development, ask questions that are relevant, find answers to those questions, document and tell our own stories, which is why I asked you when we started to say, can you tell us what is your personal story in terms of this issue? We need, you need, I need to have a personal story. We need to tell our stories. We need to tell stories for our communities. We need to tell stories for our countries. We need to tell stories for Africa. And these are the stories that can shape the world and that can change the narrative around how we should be able to respond to the climate crisis as a people. This is why this fellowship is very important. It is critical for all of us. I wish we could have all the youth in Africa attending this kind of fellowship so we can be able to understand where we are as a people and how we can move together as a team, collaborate, work together. So, for example, simple floods. Sorry to use the word simple flood, but flood is flood. But a simple occurrence of a flood in an area where there is a school will mean that those children that go to that school can no longer access the school as it was before the floods occurred. So that is direct impact on education. Simple from floods. Children cannot go to school because they have no means of going to school. Simple storm rains or rainstorms, the bridge is washed out, destroyed, damaged, you cannot connect to another town. So if your business was to transport goods and services to go and sell in another area or another part of your country or another country, you can no longer do so because now there is no connectivity in terms of road infrastructure. The bridge has been washed away. It was just a rainstorm that has occurred, damaged the bridge, completely gone. You can no longer move, you can no longer do any business, which means all the other sectors now start begin to lose out from the simple occurrence of rainstorm itself. So when we think about the impacts in terms of the economic situation, we need to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So imagine we tell our stories from as far as from the raindrop to no bridge, to no access to finance, to no access to education, to no access to healthcare. And if we're able to unpack our stories in that way and demonstrate the need in that perspective, we can be able to make a difference as a generation itself. So that's what we need to begin to do. Tell a story from as little as, droughts that occurred in my mother's village in Shangobo to how it has come out to become a human-animal conflict, competing for the very little resources that are available there. Tell those stories, and let's gather that data and find where we can deposit this data so it is easily accessible, and let's begin to use that data to make informed decisions. Last year at the COP27, we had one of the milestone achievement, which is what we call the establishment of the framework to fund to support loss and damage, especially for Africa, because we are the ones who are the most impacted by the climate change. So yes, there was an agreement that we should establish the funding framework for loss and damage. But in the near future, when that is implemented, how do you know how much money should go to Kenya? How do you know how much money should go to Zambia? How do you know how much money should go to Nigeria to support loss and damage? How do you know how much money should go to South Africa or Rwanda or Ghana? It's difficult. It's difficult to quantify. How do you quantify loss and damage resulting from the changing climate itself? It's difficult. But that's because it's difficult, that means it's not possible. Which means we need to be prepared as a people to invest in ensuring that our data infrastructure, data collection infrastructure, data analytics infrastructure, and data reporting infrastructure are in good shape, so that we can be able to capture all this and be able to use the variable economic models to quantify the costs associated with the impacts we're talking about, and therefore it will be easier to demand for resource allocation, because you know how much you need to address a particular climate change adaptation question in your particular community. So if there's anything that we need to do after this session, is let's start finding answers to how do we collect the data, how do we manage the data, how do we report and tell our stories, how do we use the same data to inform policy direction for our country, for our continent, how do we use the same data to inform the vision that Africa must have on the table at the African Climate Summit, and how do we know that this is what is needed for this particular local community? We need to tell that story. And if we tell that story, where do we deposit that story? Is it on social media? Is it in the parliament? Is it in all various forums that are available? So we need to begin to speak and tell our own stories. Unfortunately, if I want any statistics that are reliable for Africa, most of the time we have to go to foreign, research papers that have been done by foreigners. Foreigners, I mean those that are not resident of the African continent. Even if I want information about the story in Shango that I've told you, it won't come from anywhere in Africa. You will find some other guy somewhere outside the continent telling our own stories. And how should we even be comfortable if that is the case? So that shouldn't be the issue that should continue to happen. We need to fight to be part and parcel of this narrative that we want to change, so that we can be the leaders in the space of transforming how the world looks at Africa and how Africa can solve its own problem. We have a lot of solutions. Some of them are lecture-based solutions. Local knowledge is very rich, but we don't tap into those things as well. So apart from documenting the problems, we also have solutions in Africa that we can also document, work on, and for those that are in research, you can even further do research on them and understand the efficacy of those solutions, climate solutions in our territories, and then we begin to add value in that context. So those are the issues that I want to just highlight in terms of the impacts of climate change. It goes far and far and far, and I want us to not think in one dimension, but in multi-dimensional perspective, which is why I want us to really go deeper to the root of the problem, and then begin to unpack it stage by stage up to the surface issues that people see. So when you see someone routing on the road, don't just end it there. Understand what is the back, the grassroots cause to that routing. So the issue is that guy is hungry. And why is he hungry? Because he has money, but the money that he has is not enough to buy a bag of milk. Why is a bag of milk expensive? It is expensive because the crop yields were low last year, and the few that were yielded were eaten by animals. Or why was it like, why was that the case? Because there was a very little rainfall that we received that particular year. And what happened after that? It led to crop failure. And then you unpack the story and you put a story like it can be for your community or for a particular individual in your community, and then you begin to see how you can add value to that. So that is in terms of the climate change impacts. I think there are many examples that we can give itself, like for example, climate change migration or climate change induced migrations. We see more people moving from where there's lack to where there's plenty. So in the past, I studied the other group last on Monday, I mean, that when I was growing up, during school holidays, you go to the villages. And when you go to the villages, when you come back to the towns, everyone in town will expect you to bring more food because there was plenty of food in the villages those days. When you go to a village, you find plenty of food. You don't even need to carry any food for them. You will find plenty of food in the villages. Today, it's the opposite. There is no food in the villages. So even all of us, the villagers now, want to come to the towns. And when you come to the towns, you don't even have any access to land for farming. There is problems and problem after problems. There's all the bigger issues that we need to be discussing also. So if everyone wants to come to town, live in the village, what is going to happen in the town? Overcrowding, rising crime, and all those other problems that start happening. From the simple climate-related problem, now we're talking about rising crime in the society and all the other issues that we have talked about earlier on. So this is how we need to begin to think about these products. And the underscore there is all these issues I've discussed have a direct impact on the economic outlook of any country that we can talk about. Because if there's rising conflicts or rising in I can say domestic violence or whatever it is because of that from the changing climates or the crisis that is happening, and there's instability, there's no peace in the country, people are fighting over water. Like I think in Kenya, there was that report on the battle and Lake Turkana where people are fighting for access to water. And which investor would want to invest in such a country where there is this peace, lack of peace and instability? No one, because if the situation is volatile, it means the economics are unpredictable, and therefore no one wants to put money in such a country. So this is how it is connected. So climate change is an economic issue. Climate change is a leadership issue. Climate change is a health issue. Climate change is, an education issue. Climate change is an agriculture issue. Climate change is everything you think about. So it's connected. Actually, it exacerbates already existing problems that we have in the continent, which is why it should be made a priority issue of concern. And that's why all of us here should be change makers and be willing to play a role to contribute to addressing this problem that has come to harm to the economy of Africa itself. I hope that makes sense. And if there are any comments at this stage, I'd like to take in 1 or 2 or 3 comments, additions, or even questions for the next 3 minutes. Anyone who is willing to from what we've shared so far, if you have got even maybe other experiences or stories that you can talk about just under a minute, for 3 minutes, you can come through.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Moyanda. So we're going to take questions now. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can do that by raising up your hand or putting it in the chat session below.
Okay. There is no one.
Okay, so I just checked the Q&A and Ruby is asking, how can we assist the political interests in the sustainable development process to promote climate impact? That's a question for you, sir.
Yeah, I didn't get it clear. So he's asking about political.
Okay, Ruby is asking, how can we assist the political interests in the sustainable development processes to promote climate impact?
Yes, that's a very good question. So that's the second part that we're going to cover as we close out this first part. So, but most importantly, what we need to now, but before I answer that question, I think let me hear if there are any other comments on what has been shared so far. Well, that's the next
Okay.
part. Then I'll go into
Yes, there's another question at Q&A also. Says the ultimate benefit is what we must look at. The general good of the ecosystem is very important. Sustainable development must be the goal. Okay, that's not a question. That's just a contribution.
Yeah, so that's a contribution. So the challenge that we have is building up on that comment on the ultimate interest. Is the definition, what is the ultimate interest? That's where the challenge comes in. And what does the environmental sustainability look like for Nigeria? What does environmental sustainability look like for Zambia? And what does environmental sustainability look like for Kenya? We don't have like a common definition to really inform those concepts. And that's why the problem comes in. And that's why there's also now some people taking advantage to greenwash people to show that they are doing something to protect the environment when they're actually not. And some people even support that because they don't. We have different definitions, which is why we need to start by unpacking what does, for example, a green economy look like for Nigeria, and then we should have a shared understanding as Nigerians for Nigeria with a Nigerian interest. Then now we can work towards that. What does the green economy look like for Zambia? We need to have a shared understanding as citizens, first of all, before a foreigner comes in to define what green economy is for us. We need to have locally led initiatives, locally led solution, locally led perspective, ideas, which is why research and development is very critical for Africa, and we need to be able to have informed, decisions by doing so. So when we clear that, then we can begin to answer the other follow-up questions in terms of what sustainability looks like for our countries, and therefore, if we commit to sustainable development, this is what it looks like for us. Yeah, so this is I think the starting point. Let me go straight to the follow-up question that came through. So let's talk. We're talking about the problems, and I think there are a lot of problems. You can even spend another 3 hours talking about problems. But the question now is, what is the solution? So what I've learned so far, we have understood, I think by now we've understood the relationship that we have between economics and the changing climate itself. And it is clear that you cannot expect economic growth without having, consideration for sustainability of our environment itself in the face of the climate crisis. So those two go together. Yeah, so we cannot boast of economic development without addressing the crisis that is taking place in our communities. So that much we should really be able to remember even as we go. So there are problems, we have discussed problems. Now let's talk about the solutions. Or rather, what should we do now? Now we know the impacts of the economy on the climate crisis, on tourism, agriculture, whatever, and so on and so forth. So now what should we do? Okay. So when we talk about economics, we're talking about, in short, how can we participate? Okay. Yeah, how can we participate as a people? So we can participate in myriad ways as Africans. I talked about research and development, which inform the knowledge industry. So we have the agriculture industry, the mining industry, hospitality industry. We have all those kinds of industries around us. There's one that is often not talked about, which is the knowledge in as people invest in the development of our knowledge and skills, and then we use that to to validate our value itself. Then someone will pay for it. Because if the world is looking for information every day, and we should be able to provide answers. That's number one. So that's how we come in. And through this, also pointed to the issue around informing political interest. So politics is interested in numbers. So if you're talking about politics, you should be able to demonstrate numbers. And imagine in your research work, you unpack how many people are impacted. There's millions of millions that are displaced by floods in Nigeria. And this is what these millions of people are saying. And you tell a politician, there's definitely a politician who want to listen to you, or if you want to influence policy direction for your country, and you show them evidence-based stories that demonstrate how much interest people have in a particular subject, and there are millions of people that have got the power to vote. They will give you a listening ear because they know they are not listening to you, but to the millions of other people out there. So that way, we can use that as our bargaining power to say, we work with the communities, we are on the ground, and we are able to communicate with the ground, and they listen to us, and this is what they're telling us. And this is what we're asking you to do. We want you to define a green economy strategy for our country that is participatory, wherefore inclusive, and also the views of the people should be incorporated in the design. And therefore inform the policy on how we want the communities to be empowered by creating a climate change fund or a climate fund for Nigeria that will support directly the grassroots or the people in our communities and the grassroots to be able to empower them to participate in climate adaptation projects. That is how we inform, political interest. In other countries like the USA and the UK, it's actually one of the, raise expectation during campaigns. They will ask you, what do you want to do? Or what is your plan in terms of addressing the crisis, the climate crisis in our country? What is your party manifesto saying? So that is actually that serious in those countries, and people can choose to vote for you or not vote for you based on what you say about climate change. So imagine if we can do that also in Africa, to say, we are interested in Africa. Yes, tell us, okay, I'm going to reduce minimum price. How? Because story is not start coming. No. The question is, we're asking you how, because we know there's climate change happening. So the question that we're asking is, how do you plan to address the changing climate that has impacted our communities, thereby leading to increased production cost of maize that we use to produce millet? What is your plan in terms of addressing the climate question? So imagine if I'm a politician, I go to social media, I see people talking about the same subject. I go on TV, I see the same subject, youth are talking about it. I read the paper, I see it, I read articles, I see it everywhere. All the 110 people in this room, imagine if you wrote even one article each every month. It means 110 times chance of me being exposed to a story about climate change and how it's impacting our communities. That is change we're talking about. That is change we're talking about. Because that way it means if it is mostly talked about, then it has got public interest. And if it has got public interest, then it has got political interest. I think that's the secret I can tell you. So which is why I spend a lot of time talking about the power of storytelling and the need for us to capture data, information, to inform decision. So that when we speak from an informed point of view as advocates for a greener future for Africa. And that way people listen to us, because we can point real-time examples and we can also expose real-time solutions. And that is how we can collectively change the narrative as a people. As you do this, you must be familiar with the common terms like greenhouse gas. When you talk about greenhouse gases, what are you talking about? Okay, so these are gases that have the ability to absorb and trap heat. Carbon dioxide is one of the prominent one. So when they are emitted, they go and settle in the atmosphere and form a layer, thereby causing what we call greenhouse effect, which is now trapping the heat that comes from the reflection of the earth, and therefore keep it within the atmosphere, and therefore increasing the global temperature of the atmosphere, which causes sea level rise and all this that we talked about earlier on. The climate change mitigation, we talked about it here, is anything that you do to reduce greenhouse gas emission. So if you plant trees, you are helping in reducing the greenhouse gas emission, because trees, they eat carbon, and carbon is a greenhouse gas. So therefore, what you are doing there is mitigation. If you transition from fossil powered machines to renewable energy powered machines or solar powered machines, that is a mitigation project that you are doing. So mitigation simply means whatever you do to help in the reduction or sequestration of the carbon in the atmosphere itself. That is mitigation. Climate finance, any funds or financial resources needed to support climate change mitigation and adaptation measures. So that's what is very critical. And for finance, we know access to finance is critical for Africa. And unfortunately, when you hear reports about hundreds of billions of dollars allocated to fight climate change in Africa, it's one thing, but to access that is another. And they'll tell you all sorts of things. You don't have policy that are required. You don't have the institution that can run this fund in your respective regions. You need to have a certain capacity to manage the fund. There are a lot of bureaucracies also, and that's where the problem starts. We are saying the problem is urgent, yet on the other side, so access to the finance that can solve the problem is also problematic. That's what the problem is. So imagine if all the 110 people in this room said something about the need to unlock access to finance for Africa, which means you have 110 times opportunity to be heard and therefore change the narrative itself. That's how we should do it, Africa. And let's do it, Africa. And this is what we're talking about. So we'll not be able to achieve anything without money. We need this finance itself to come, and it should be able to reach the intended target, which is the grassroots that are actually experiencing the problem that they are facing as the climate change itself. We have Green Climate Fund. We have a number of finance institutions that we can access funding from. The Adaptation Fund itself. All these are not easy to get. Zambia only had, I think, only has 2 banks that have been accredited under the Green Climate Fund itself. And they're still in the process of what we are calling readiness package for the ZIC, which is Zambia Industrial Commercial Bank. And when they pass that readiness program, that's when they'll be able to be given a chance to manage the adaptation fund. It's a long process, very long process. By the time it's been effected, we would have lost out probably even 4 billion by 2025 as predicted in terms of GDP loss for Zambia. So these are serious issues, guys, and I want us to really take them seriously and be able to see how we can contribute to this. Terms like carbon pricing. So we talk about the carbon market itself, and also for this one, we have the aspect where we price the threshold around how much carbon should be allowable in terms of emissions for our country. So in terms of the command and control, for example, we have what we call the carbon tax, where everyone is expected to pay a certain amount of money towards the carbon tax for their country. Again, here the question is, where does this money go? Where as Africa, we are looking for money elsewhere. Okay, yeah, we are taxing people on carbon, industries, factories, motor vehicle, users, and so on and so forth. But after getting this money, where does it go? We need to start asking questions like that, because there should be transparency in the process. If we're talking about climate governance, we should expect transparency. And then we go further to talk about the benefits that may arise after we put to good use, diligently, prudently, the money that is raised from the carbon tax in itself. That is how much it can be beneficial to us before anything else. So that is one thing. But also, I want us in this room to think about the rise in business in terms of the carbon trading. It's a serious rise in industry and business. Everyone is talking about it. Just last week, I think prior to the Africa Climate Summit, I saw that the United Arab Emirates announced their pledge to dedicate $450 million towards buying or purchasing, or towards the carbon trading in Africa, for Africa alone. So they are willing to spend that much money to offset their carbon credit rights to Africa. And that means Africa will be able to sell their carbon rights to them, and they'll be able to use it to enhance their production. But that's the money that we can channel to other benefits, sectors that can benefit from such kind of things. There are many others that are actually bringing more money in the carbon market, carbon trade space. And we need to position ourselves. That's the economists are talking about. That money can be used to create more jobs for Africa. That money can be used to create more green businesses in Africa. That's an empowered economy. Our GDP start rising. That's climate change and economics are talking about. And we need to start doing that, guys. Zambia was talking about revising or actually coming up with the carbon trading, guidelines, which is still in the process and on the part of government. We don't have a clear policy yet. We need the policy that can govern that. We need to ensure increased participation of the common citizens themselves in all of these trade opportunities in terms of carbon. We need to educate our people. What is carbon trading? How can you participate? What kind of businesses can benefit from it? That's what we need to do as change makers and as advocates and as trained, leaders in the space. So that's what we need to start pushing forward in terms of preparing ourselves to benefit as Africa. Yes, it's a problem, but I can tell you that the best place to build a business is around a problem. Before you even think about the solution, the question is, what is the problem? And I think the problem around climate change is very clear and is known and is experienced by all of us in here. We are the best people to tell the problem around the climate crisis that Africa is experiencing. And therefore, we're the best people to tell what kind of businesses can be realized from this as an opportunity. So begin to think climate change or the climate crisis not as a problem, not as a crisis, but begin to think about it as an opportunity, as a business, as a way in which we can be able to maximize our social, economic, and environmental productivity. I'm trying to be careful there because I don't want to leave behind the environmental aspect of everything. So social, economic, environmental productivity, we need to maximize that. And that can only be done if you look at it as a problem. Our colleague from Nigeria talked about his project that is doing around waste management, waste disposal. Waste disposal is a bigger problem. But the question is, how much are you positioning that as a business that to be profitable and be able to create green jobs and be able to actually even scale up in other countries? That is what we should start thinking about. Let's not just do projects that are short-sighted. What I mean by short-sighted is we are doing a project with the objective, let's say, we just want to plant trees. We are planting trees, go green, go green, go green, then you end there. Let's go further and say, how can we set up a business here? Oh, yes, a tree has the ability to sequestrate carbon dioxide from an atmosphere, which means if you plant more trees, thousands and thousands of trees or hectares of trees, it means that we will be able to offset a significant amount of carbon from the atmosphere. Oh my God, that is an opportunity for carbon trading business. Someone is looking for that, and someone can finance that project, which is a reforestation project or afforestation project to preserve a forest or to sequestrate a great amount of carbon from the atmosphere. They do their maths. I think one of the banks that is good at that is the Rabobank in Switzerland that is actually doing a lot of financing around carbon trading. So you can find a broker also that can help you and find that access to those monies, preserve the forest, get the money to sustain it as a business. And that is how we can grow. So we need to start thinking about what is the opportunity, how do we position ourselves, and how do we benefit from this? Let's not continue to be cry babies as Africa. Every time we go to the COP, we go as a weaker party. We don't need to go there as a weaker party. We need to go there as a stronger party, putting clear their demands on paper and the expectation on paper, defining the rules of the game also. That is what we want to see going forward. And this is what I expect from each one of us in this classroom today, so that we can go back there renewed and reinforced in terms of what we want to do as solutions. So we have a lot of economic models that are used to quantify the economic.
Let's be a little patient.
Yeah.
Why he walks? Okay, fine. Okay.
I don't know why you lost me. I keep being kicked out today.
Yeah, but I mean, we drop back on our technology. It's something that we need to keep working on. Yeah, okay, so we are back now.
Or is it me or it was you who was kicked out?
Oh no, I think it's actually from your end. You were talking, but then it was muted at some point.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can hear you loud and clear now.
Yeah, I was talking about the carbon trading business. I don't know if that is why I lost me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. From that point.
Ah, okay. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, so I was saying that we need to begin to have a solution mindset as a way in which you want to respond to the crisis itself. Let's not think about it as a crisis anymore. Let's think about it as what is the opportunity. So if there's floods, the question is what is the opportunity? If there's drought, the question is what is the opportunity? If there's heat waves, the question is what is the opportunity? And so on and so forth. So we can begin to position ourselves as green entrepreneurs in the space. So if there's a problem somewhere, let's begin to tell our stories to inform and make a business case that can attract financing. There's a lot of money around climate change, guys, I can tell you, and there's a lot more coming in terms of financing. But if you really follow this space, you'll find that the narrative is changing. There's more financing going to green innovation than anything else. Very few people want to fund printing of t-shirts because a lot of us want to do projects. Oh, we are printing t-shirts, or we are going to a community to demonstrate. Yes, that is good for advocacy, for lobbying, for policy influence. We should keep on doing all those stuff, but also let's start thinking about it from the business perspective. And when we do so, even if you may not get a grant, you can still get debt financing. You can still do equity raise, which means someone can be willing to buy shares in your business and grow it. So we need to find more business-oriented solutions. That is how we can create the much talked about green jobs and then grow the green business sector itself. Then we can talk about economic growth in as much as we are trying to address the climate crisis itself on the other hand. So yes, we will still solve the problem. The only thing is we are changing the mindset. Because usually when you're always talking about problems and what can't work, it's very rare that you can think about solutions with the same wavelength. So we need to shift that. If we can think more about the solutions and opportunities that come through this change, then ultimately when we implement those solutions, the environment will benefit and will bring about the sustainability that we're talking about. And there are a lot of sectors where you can find yourself in this space. You can be in the technology sector, you can be able to invest in an app that can be able to count how many trees you have and therefore inform the forest officer that manages the forest to ensure that there are nowhere people are cutting trees, and if there's any change, what is the thresholds, and they can manage that. We can have a policy that can inform that. We can do a lot of interventions that can actually make a significant difference in the space, not only from technology, but also you can do, other projects, like maybe in the health sector. We know indoor air pollution is one of the critical problems in Africa. Children are mostly affected. For Ghana, for example, I know there's Green Climate Fund, Clean Air Fund, and they give money to projects that address the health concerns that result from pollution of children, of areas where there are children, and therefore, if there is any solution in that space, you can always reach out to Clean Air Fund. They can even support you, give you some grants, some money that we can use to actually kick off even your business as an idea. So there's a lot that we can do, a lot. So let's not spend more time talking about the problem. Yes, we need to understand the problem, and the good news is we are experiencing this crisis ourselves, and we're the best ones to tell the story about what the problem looks like. So we are ready to work to do that because we experience it. My stomach is hungry because there's no food, because there's no water to water my crops, and we can tell all those stories. But the question is, what is the solution? Let's put the solution on the table. Question one, is it bankable? Is it scalable? Is it profitable? How many jobs am I going to create? What impact am I going to create? You can talk to any politician that wants to create more jobs. They will support you because they want to be able to register a score to say, we created jobs. And this is the ideas that are put in place to ensure continuity and sustainability of our economy, of our people, of the social sector. And that's what we need to do after this. We need to see more people working together. Ideas can be exchanged. What might have worked in Nigeria can still be done in Zambia. What might have worked in Zambia can still be done in Nigeria. But Nigeria, Zambia is people. It is not the territories. It's not the lies. It's people. I should be able to talk to my friend in Nigeria My friend in Nigeria should be able to talk to me. And sometimes the man I'm looking for in Zambia is in Nigeria, and Nigeria has got access to that kind of man I'm looking for. But the idea that can access that man is in Zambia. So imagine if we come together, it means the idea can be able to reach the right target in terms of financing and get the money. We do something together, we can invest in each other's countries as a people. This is what we need to do. We need to see more collaboration, a multi-sector approach in everything that we are doing as Africa. Africa shouldn't have limitation in terms of boundaries. That's why we are trying to achieve something from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area program, so that we can begin to trade amongst each other with the conscience of also ensuring sustainability in the process, informed decisions around technology transfer, informed decisions around financing, and all these issues. So we need to begin to be leaders in that space, which is why I said earlier on to say leadership is not a position, but it's a calling, and the calling simply means each one of you can be useful in your respective society, respective sectors, and be leaders in that context. So I think there's a lot of examples that can be given there in terms of where these issues have been used. But most importantly, we have talked about everything: the regulations, subsidies, and so on and so forth. So that is what we had from the slides. But I want to use this opportunity to listen from what you have gotten so far from the session. We are winding up now. We have about 5 minutes to go. So I want to hear from your reflections and what you think we should focus on as Africa with respect to the knowledge that we've gathered today. I saw a hand. I think someone was raising their hand. If they can give it a chance to speak.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation and the answers you've given. One area of observation, which I think applies to a lot of us, especially in this area of climate change, is being able, just like you said earlier, being able to measure the returns on social returns on investment of whatever is used in the climate change projects. And I think that might be a topic that we should take more seriously, because a lot of players in that sector, or a lot of people that implement projects, don't really know how to quantify and measure. So I think that's an area that we should look at, being able to help one another in gaining knowledge on how to calculate the social returns on investment. Thank you.
Very important. That's a very important point, actually. So it also speaks to what we shared earlier on, to say we need to begin to acquaint ourselves with all these metrics, models that are being used.
Yes, yes.
And this is how we can position ourselves for all the opportunities in the space that are available here. If we can demonstrate like social impact, economic impact, environmental impact, business case, then we can thrive and move faster. So I think that can be a very nice topic to have just independently. I mean, this is more generic conversation, but I think imagine if we can create something from this conversation to really have a more focused.
To figures, yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think
because I realized I had a project, and I got someone to help me to actually tell me in monetary terms what was the impact of this project on this community. And I had them work it out, and they got the fact that for every $1 spent in that community, we were able to create $12.50. So that gave me a different view of the outcome of the projects. And for many years, we all carry out projects. Nobody measures the financial value that was created by the project. We just do the project reports and we submit. But nobody goes down to actually quantify the value of those benefits. So I thought that is always missing in all project reports, and a lot of people don't value that aspect of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's very much. I hope Moyoya was taking notes. We may need to have something on that. We can learn from each other and be able to inform. Because such a report, even if I had money like Dangote, I can give you more money to go and do more projects. It was like you can show me the value and the impact of what you're doing. That's the level we should reach. And these are the kind of conversation that we need to have as Africa. And we need to help each other as Africa. So that we shouldn't be complaining. Let's do something and realize the collective benefit for us. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I also wanted to add, that it's to what I made mention. It's actually very important because I mean, even Mr. Kufuna has alluded to the fact that we should not just then because we are trying to lead the greener Africa and all of those good stuff. How do we quantify or how do we measure the impact of our projects, and how is it translated to the average lives of of people? And it's actually very important because I see some of us or many of us here in the development space, and of course, I mean, if you have an NGO and you're thinking of diverse ways of bringing this impact, it's important that as you plan your project, you bring on different stakeholders. Right? She has talked about bringing someone that was not even part of the team, to calculate the impact. So I know to a large extent that it might involve more costs. You bringing in maybe somebody that is a professional M&E person, somebody that is into finance that is well, so that as you're planning your project, you've seen the end. You're not just going to do a one-off project that will not have a lasting impact on people. I wanted to also add that, of course, we know in Africa, a lot of things don't fly if it does not have the support of the government. And when I say the government, the political class. So, and I was just, thinking that, if we are going to be looking at raising more climate resilience fund, climate adaptation, fund, the major problem right now is that most African nations do not yet see climate change and issues around climate change as really as weighty as health or food. So my question is, how can we kind of make this fight for climate change, and it's actually being something that is a priority? How can we weave it into our political process such that it's now seen as important and it gets the blessing of our political leaders? So as young people, how can we make persuade or ensure that the issues around climate is being prioritized in our political system, so that vis-a-vis this issue of bringing about or enlightening or showing the politicians the economic advantage of climate opportunities and all of that. How can we weave our passion and show the political class this thing? I don't know if I've
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, you're clear. You're
got your
very
question.
clear.
Also
Right.
But I think you partly answered your question yourself.
Okay.
I think that one part of the answer is to show them the monetary value and benefits of what you're trying to tell them to put in place.
Yes.
So if we're able to convince them that this is the problem, This is the potential solution. This is the value of that solution. And this is what you stand to gain. Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is what you stand. This
Sorry,
is
I
what
don't know
you
if it's
stand.
for my end.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Hello?
it's clearer now.
Yeah, you
Okay.
can go ahead.
I said that if we're able
Yes,
to
it's clearer.
present the problem, present the
Breaking
solution,
up earlier.
quantify the solution, and
Yes.
also show the benefits in monetary terms of what the value of that benefit to the country and to the politicians themselves and to the target audience or whatever. When they see all of that and they still refuse to do anything, then you know that there is something wrong. They are now the problem, not the climate change. So the point I'm trying to make is that something that has been missing in everybody's proposals or stuff or business case is usually the social returns on investment. Research has proven that most times we do not defend our projects in monetary terms. We defend our projects in theoretical benefits, environmental benefits, social impact. But what does this do in putting money in the pocket of the person,
People.
of the people, of you yourself? What does it? How does it put money in your own pocket and in the money in the pockets of the people and the community, and then maybe the country?
Yes.
So if we start to look at it in that angle and that approach, then we will gain more results quicker, because we're collectively speaking the same language. But when one person speaks and 10,000 people say something different, then of course they'll follow the majority.
100%. 100%. That's a perfect answer to that question. So usually we are more inclined towards the environmental, social aspect, yet we forget the economics. So if you can argue from the economics as well, with the environment and social aspect in your mind, in your concept, in your solution, then we can win. But also, just to add on the point from Amede is when you talk about politics, politicians are made by the people. So before you ask the politician what does a politician want, the question is, what do we want as a people? Because we are the ones who should inform the conversation. And
exactly.
If we have a collective position as a people, it will be easier to deal with the politicians. So like Abedi mentioned earlier on, if you can show the value, the impact across all board, it's easier to deal with the politician. Because the politician wants to go with what the people are saying. And if you can show that the people are saying this, and these are the people, and this is how they're going to benefit, and this is how you are going to benefit, then we can win.
We can even start by showing the politician what he himself will get, because that's what they want anyway.
Yeah.
And that's why they are there.
Absolutely.
They're there for their pockets. So let's just dance to the same tune. I'll start by telling you what your pocket will get.
So that's actually funny, really.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. You know, it's when you are dealing with the issues that require mindset transformation, you have to be smart, like diplomatic also and strategic also in your approach to ensure that you know, power dynamics are very important to consider as well. Get them on your side, then the rest will easily follow you. Yeah, so I think that's a very good contribution. So again, I think we are all clear to say, yes, we are advocates for sustainable development and will not change that position. We want to protect our environment. But from this session today, let's go out there and make business case from our value that we are bringing in the space of environmental, social, and governance space. So this is what we should take home with. I think next time when we meet, let's talk about the solutions that we have in our respective areas. Let's talk about the opportunity for collaboration. I saw a question about the funders usually have the problem, but it depends on what kind of solution that you have. There are funders, of course, who will give you grants, but also there are funders who will invest in your idea as a business, where you may have more authority or control over your business outputs. And the only issue is demonstrate profitability and scalability. You can have access to equity raise or rather debt financing. That is where you have the freedom to actually stick to the core of your business. But if it's a grant, definitely the owner of the money will want to call the shots and dictate where the money should go and where the money shouldn't go. So I think we should also have an understanding of what kind of money we can access, if we have what kind of an idea, and how can we shape our ideas to be able to respond to the needs of the sense of the financing itself. So those are some of the key takeaways from today's session, and I think I'm so happy this is a very live audience, and I've learned a lot as well. But I'm still not happy until one day we'll meet somewhere, all of us, and say, look at what we have done for the past 2, 3 years, 5 years. This is where we are as Africa. We are doing it, and we're making things happen for ourselves, by ourselves, with our interests, our own personal interests as Africans at heart, and we will grow this country, this continent together as a unity. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of this good creation. The Zoom link will expire, but our ambitions shouldn't expire. Our interest shouldn't expire. Our commitment shouldn't expire. We should actually come out 10 times stronger from this session and be leaders in our space, in our respective space. Don't be afraid to get in touch. If you need us to work on something together, we can support each other. Even if we don't have money to give each other, we can give each other brilliant ideas that can bring us more money to solve our problems in our communities. Let's not wait for Europe or for America to give us money. That's when we want to do something. Even a small little efforts, we can do something that can change some of the socio-economic situation in our country. And let's work together. Let's exchange ideas. Let's exchange opportunities. Let's support each other. If you need a technocrat on your project and you are part of this larger network, you can just talk to the other person. They can help you. You don't have to have all the knowledge to yourself. It's not possible. It's difficult. You may be an expert in one area or 2 areas, but probably someone else is an expert in 1 or 2 other areas. And if you work together, it will be easy to move faster. So I wish you all the best. And I look forward to a renewed Africa, a transformed Africa. And I look forward to working with all of you if the opportunity to present itself in the future. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Asante sana, narekele, and all the best. Bye-bye for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much. Let's keep clapping our hands, showing those love emojis. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing it. Today's session is really, really exciting, really, really insightful. To the extent that much to what the facilitators said in your local community, in many communities at the moment, from Nigeria to Rwanda, so the climate has, the climatic condition has shifted, in places where there's been drought and all of that. There's now flash floods from unprecedented rainfalls and all of that. And a way that you can draw in the interest of the politician is to present the business case, to these things. And, you can actually do more. I mean, I believe that each and every one of us are a force to reckon with. I want to say a big thank you again to our facilitator. We cannot thank you enough. I think it's a good thing that we had somebody from the south side, of Africa to bring a new perspective. I want to appreciate each and every one of us for being on the call. I'll be in touch with you, Mr. Kufuna. Definitely. Mr. Kufuna has also availed us the opportunity to reach out to him. You can get in touch with him on LinkedIn, Akufuna A, or you can just go on LinkedIn and type in Akufuna Myunda. You'll be able to reach him. We often share the slides and the recordings after each session. We encourage you to keep don't lose interest. Keep being encouraged. We can change these things together, right? We can do these things together. A few announcements. So first on the list is from today's class, just like we did in the precedent classes, the quick task from today's live class, what would you consider as your greatest insights? How can it be applied to what you do? Add your name, country, and social media handle. So the way we'll do it this time is, if you can give a video presentation for 30 seconds, you start by mentioning your name, the country you reside, and then, share what you've learned from today's class, and that will just, then be perfect. So, but for those that might not be able to do a video, just, do a quick text, just the way you've been doing it, share your insights, and we would like to share it on AC's social media handles. Thank you once more. Another thing I would like to add is, just like we said, aside the master class, like we had today, we also want to work with you and give you capacity on how to carry on your social impact projects. So, but I don't know, maybe it's a difficulty from this end or from your end. On the Telegram group, we have over 1,060 people, but on the WhatsApp group, which was created for group projects and then doing your project, we just have 729. So it means a lot of us on the call have not joined the groups yet. So please let us endeavor to do that. On the Telegram group, if you need support to join the project, please just indicate. On Telegram group right now, if you scroll up, there is a direction or there's an instruction on how you can join the WhatsApp group. Please would like us to do that. Yesterday, we did some kind of training stroke, a review of the project proposal. We've shared the recording. If you want the recording personally, please ask on your country group. Someone will share it on your country group. We love you. We thank you for being part of today's session. If you have any other inquiry or concern, you can reach me by sending a DM or Bamidele. You can also do that. In the absence of any other question or any other submission, is bye from me. Have a pleasant day, everyone. Bye. The attendance, of course, will be shared. Just watch out on either the Telegram or the WhatsApp group. So no worries. I understand that a number of us had issues with our network. All right, guys.
Thank you.
It's bye from
Bye.
me. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a pleasant day. Thanks for joining today. Please don't forget the quick tasks. If you can do a video, let's see your pretty face. Let's see how you do it, your public speaking. Really be helpful. Really be amazing. Bye. Of course, the recording will be shared. And the slides also.